Okay, welcome back in. I'm now going to finally complete my recap by looking at Saturday's action from the NHL. There were 13 games on tap, therefore 26 teams were fighting for 2 points in the standings. Starting with some early afternoon action between the team I bleed bleu, blanc, and rouge for, the Montreal Canadiens. They went to New Jersey to take on the Devils. In the second period, Brendan Gallagher would open up the scoring 3 minutes and 6 seconds into that frame, his ninth of the year from Jake Evans and Josh Anderson. Meyer would tie the game up 5 minutes and 23 seconds into that frame, his 11th goal of the season from Ball and Tyler Toffoli. Nick Suzuki would give the Habs a 2-1 lead, so with 6 minutes and 53 seconds remaining, his 21st of the season from Caulfield and Kovacevic. Andre Palat would score with 2 minutes and 10 seconds remaining to tie the game up at 2. That would be his 9th goal of the season, assisted by Nemec. After 40 minutes of play, there were 4 goals on the board, 2 aside. Nico Hischier would score on a power play, his 19th of the year, from Toffoli and Luke Hughes, and that goal happened with 6 minutes and 27 seconds remaining. Exactly 3 minutes after Hischier scored, Bratt would increase the lead to 4-2, his 21st of the year from Meyer. With a minute and 1 seconds remaining, Nick Suzuki would pot his second goal of the game, his 22nd of the year from Armia and Matheson, but unfortunately for the Habs, they were not able to mount a comeback, so 4-3 would be the final score in this matchup. Sorry about that. So with that, the Devils are currently sitting 29, 24, and 4. They're still on the outside looking in when it comes to the postseason. As for the Montreal Canadiens, I've said this in my last several videos, there's no postseason action in La Belle Province, so maybe next year. We'll see. If I'm being realistic, maybe the year after that. They just have to get out of the Atlantic Division, and then we have a chance. All right, the next matchup took place in Detroit, where we had the Red Wings, and they were playing host to the St. Louis Blues. All right, let's take a look and see how this game went. So in the first, Patrick Kane would get his 11th goal of the year from Shane Gostisbehere and Alex DeBrincat just 33 seconds into that opening frame. Rasmussen would increase the lead to 2-0, 4 minutes and 21 seconds into that frame. That would be his 12th goal of the year from Raymond and Jeff Petrie. Fabry would increase the lead to 3-0 just a minute and 3 seconds after that, getting his 14th goal of the year, making it 3-0 in favor of the Red Wings. With just under a minute to go, 58 seconds to be exact, Alex DeBrincat would increase the lead to 4-0. That would be a power play goal, his 20th of the year, assisted by Seider and Daniel Sprong. So after 20 minutes of play, the Red Wings were up 4-0. Bolduc would finally get the Blues on the board in the second period. 7 minutes and 32 seconds remaining, his first of the season, assisted by Brendan Saad and Walker. JT Compher would score with 3 minutes and 4 seconds remaining, increasing the lead to 5-1. That would be his 14th of the year from Raymond and Rasmussen. DeBrincat would get his second goal of the game, his 21st of the year, assisted by his buddy Patrick Kane, and that goal happened with a minute and 26 seconds remaining on the clock. There was no scoring in the third, and if you're a Blues fan, thank God. 6-1 would be the final score in this matchup. With that, Detroit's 31, 20, and 6. They currently have the number 1 wildcard spot locked in. And as for the Blues, they have been in the playoff position, but after this loss, and I'll get on to the other team after, they now find themselves on the outside looking in with a record of 30, 25, and 2. All right. Next matchup took place on Long Island, where we had the Islanders, and they were playing host to the Tampa Bay Lightning. All right, in the first period, Nick Paul would kick things off for the Lightning. He's getting his 16th goal of the season from Hagel and Radish. Kucherov would score a minute and 22 seconds after that. For Kucherov, that would be his 37th goal of the year, assisted by Hedman and Parabix. After 20 minutes of play, it was 2-0 in favor of Tampa Bay. In the second period, exactly 5 minutes into that frame, Braden Point would get a power play goal, his 29th of the year, assisted by Kucherov and Victor Hedman. At that point, it was 3-0 in favor of Tampa heading into the third period. Anders Lee would finally get the Islanders on the board with 6 minutes and 14 seconds. Sorry, 6 minutes and 16 seconds remaining. 6:16 left. There we go. That would be his 15th goal of the year from Barzal and Dobson. Nelson would cut the deficit to 3-2 with 2 minutes and 35 seconds remaining. Power play goal. That would be his 25th of the year, assisted by Dobson. Luke Glendening would put the game on ice late in the third period with just 31 seconds to go. His 9th goal of the year from Hedman and Kucherov. And 4-2 is where we'd stand at the end of regulation. So with the victory, the Lightning have a record of 31-23-5. They currently have the number 2 wild card position locked down. As for the Islanders, they're still several points behind the Lightning for that last wild card spot. They have a record of 23-20-14. And with the remaining of their schedule, they'd have to hope for a miracle to be able to climb the standings and obviously try to catch Tampa Bay. All right, now we're off to Philadelphia. We have the, hold on a second, Flyers, and they played host to the New York Rangers. So a battle of two teams in the Metropolitan. All right, let's take a look and see how this game went. So there's no scoring in the first. We have to jump ahead to the second period. With just about 12 minutes into that frame, Lafreniere would open up the scoring for the Rangers, getting his 17th goal of the year from Trocheck and Keandre Miller. In the third period, 2 minutes and 36 seconds into that frame, Forster would get his 11th goal of the year from Scott Laughton and Travis Sanheim to tie the game up at 1. Rempe would get his first goal as a member of the New York Rangers, assisted by Gaudreau and Schneider, 6 minutes and 31 seconds into that period, and that would be the game-winning goal. 2-1 would be the final score in this one. So before I get on to the record, the Rangers haven't lost in like over a month. With this victory, they've now won 10 games in a row. They are legitimate contenders, in my opinion. They should be able to compete for a Stanley Cup. There's no reason why they couldn't. This team is just stacked. It's unreal. With that, 39-16-3, again, still very comfortable in first place in that Metropolitan Division. And despite the loss, the Flyers are still third in that division with a record of 30-21-7. Okay, the next matchup took place in Florida, where we had the Panthers, and they were playing host to the Washington Capitals. All right, let's take a gander and see just who won this game and who scored. No scoring in the first period. We have to jump all the way ahead to the second, where Nick Cousins would open up the scoring for the Florida Panthers 4 minutes and 3 seconds into that frame, getting his third goal of the year from Kulikov and Brandon Montour. Milano would tie the game up with a power play goal, 1.5 minutes to go, as 6th of the year from Sandin and Max Pacioretty. After 40 minutes of play, we were all tied up at 1. Tom Wilson would get a power play goal for the Washington Capitals, 9 minutes and 49 seconds to go. His 13th of the year from Dylan Strome and John Carlson. With 3.5 minutes remaining, the captain, Andrei Barkov, would get his 13th of the year, assisted by Verhaeghe and Brandon Montour, a power play goal to note. We wouldn't need extra time, therefore overtime took place. Forsland would be the hero, getting his 9th goal of the year, assisted by Sam Bennett, and that goal happened with 1 minute and 19 seconds to go on the clock. So the Panthers with a 3-2 victory over the Capitals. With that, Florida's 38-16-4. They are second in that Atlantic Division, but they're only a point behind the Bruins, so that anything can happen. And this division's still up for grabs. And as for the Capitals, 26-21-9, they're still several points back of the Lightning for that last wildcard spot, so a very crushing loss this late in the season. All right, this matchup took place between an Eastern team and a Western Conference team, and both these teams are pretty good, I'm not going to lie. So we had the visiting Toronto Maple Leafs, who were still continuing their road trip, and they paid a visit to Denver to take on the Colorado Avalanche. Let's take a gander and see how this game went. So in the first, Lehkonen would kick things off for the Avalanche, getting his 8th goal of the year from McKinnon and Makar, 2 minutes and 16 seconds into that first period. Andrew Cogliano would give the Avalanche a 2-0 lead with 9 minutes and 53 seconds to go. That would be his 5th goal of the year from McKinnon and Rantanen. Tyler Bertuzzi would get a power play goal with 6 minutes and 18 seconds to go. His 8th of the year from Marner and Nylander. After 20 minutes of play, it was 2-1 in favor of the Avalanche. In the second, Tyler Bertuzzi would get his 2nd goal of the game with 5 minutes and 15 seconds remaining. That would be his 9th of the year from Nylander and Max Domi. Mitch Marner would add a late goal with 3 minutes and 12 seconds remaining. That would be his 23rd of the year from Matthew Knies and TJ Brody. After 40 minutes of play, it was 3-2 in favor of the Leafs. In the third period, Mikko Rantanen would get his 30th goal of the year, tying the game up at 3, assisted by McKinnon and Bowen Byram. 4 minutes and 41 seconds is when that goal happened. Tyler Bertuzzi would get the go-ahead goal late in that third period with 2 minutes and 51 seconds to go, a power play goal, a natural hat trick for Bertuzzi, assisted by Nylander and Austin Matthews. So 4-3 would be the final score in favor of Toronto. So with the win, the Leafs are 37-16-8. They do have the number three. So sorry, let me rephrase this. They are 3rd in that Atlantic Division. Speaking of being 3rd in their division, just after the loss, the Avalanche are 35-19-5. They have the same amount of points as Winnipeg, but I believe the Jets have a game in hand. That's why they are 3rd in that division. All right, now we're off to the nation's capital. If it's not Washington, it must be Ottawa. And they were playing against the Vegas Golden Knights. Just want to say this as a quick little side note before I review this game. If you're a Sens fan, you got to think finally this team's gelling and clicking at a good time, but unfortunately they're still down in the standings, and it's going to be very bleak for the Sens to make a postseason appearance. But if you're a Sens fan, you must finally feel like you finally got the monkey off your back. Like this team's finally gelling, they're finally getting along, but unfortunately they're winning at the worst possible time. All right, we'll take a look at the summary from this matchup. So just a lone goal to report first. Jonathan Marchessault would kick things off for the Vegas Golden Knights, getting his 30th goal of the year, assisted by his buddy William Karlsson, 5 minutes and 41 seconds in that opening period. Tanner Stevenson would increase the lead to 2-0, 3 minutes and 3 seconds into that middle frame. His 11th goal of the year from Shea Theodore and Jonathan Marchessault. Chabot would finally get the set on the board exactly 9 minutes into that frame, getting his 5th goal of the year from Joseph and Claude Giroux. With 1 minute and 13 seconds remaining in this period, Batherson would tie the game up on a power play, his 18th of the year from Brady Tkachuk and Josh Norris. After 40 minutes of play, 4 goals were scored, 2 each. Norris would score in the third period, giving the Sens a 3-2 lead, 5 minutes and 48 seconds into that frame. That would be his 16th goal of the year from Chabot and Bramstrom. Tanner Stevenson would tie the game up with 1 minute and 15 seconds to go, getting his 2nd goal of the game, his 12th of the season, assisted by Karlsson and Shea Theodore. Nothing was settled in regulation. Nothing was settled in overtime. We would need a shootout to decide a winner, and Tim Stützle would get the game-winning goal for the Ottawa Senators. So 4-3 would be the final score in favor of Ottawa. With that, they are 25-27-3. And Vegas, they're still sitting 2nd in that Pacific Division with a record of 32-19-7. All right, the next matchup, I believe, took place in BC, where we had the Canucks playing host against the Boston Bruins. Okay, let's take a gander and see just how this game went and who won. So you had 2 teams that were in first place of their respective division. Obviously, the Bruins ahead in first in the Atlantic, the Canucks in first in that Pacific Division. But coming in this matchup, it looked like the Canucks were kind of like, their wheels were kind of like falling. Like if they say this was like a train, their wheels and like the tracks, they weren't matching up. Like I think they coming into this matchup, they lost 2 or 3 in a row. Like it was not looking pretty, and especially after that loss to the Wild, they did not look like themselves since. So let's see if they can bounce back against the Bruins. No scoring in the first. We did go ahead into the second period where Boakvist would get his third goal of the year, assisted by Brazeau. 5 minutes and 27 seconds into that frame. Heinen would give the Bruins a 2-0 lead, getting his 11th goal of the year, assisted by Frederick and Morgan Geekie. And that goal happened 9 minutes and 45 seconds left in the period. So after 40 minutes of play, the Bruins were up 2-0. In the third period, 7 minutes, 11 seconds to go, Besser would finally get the Canucks on the board, getting his 32nd goal of the year, assisted by Zadorov and JT Miller. Hronek would tie the game up with 1 minute and 11 seconds to go, his 5th of the year, from JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. We would need overtime to decide a winner in this one, and on a power play, the Canucks would capitalize on that. Brock Besser, who got the first goal of the game for the Canucks, would end up getting the game-winning goal, his second of the night, his 33rd year, from JT Miller and Quinn Hughes, and that goal happened 1 minute and 34 seconds in the overtime frame. So the Canucks finally stopped the bleeding and were able to get a victory for the first time in a little while. They're still sitting first in that Pacific Division after this with a record of 38-16-6. And again, despite the overtime loss, the Bruins are still narrowly in first place in that Atlantic Division with a record of 34-12-13. All right. Now we're off to Raleigh. We had the Carolina Hurricanes, and they were playing against the Dallas Stars. All right. Let's take a gander and see how this game went. In the first, Robertson would kick things off for the Stars with 3 minutes and 22 seconds to go. He would get his 19th goal of the season from Heiskanen and Joe Pavelski. In the second frame, Sebastian Aho would tie the game up 2 minutes and 16 seconds into that period, getting his 22nd goal of the year, assisted by Fast and Svechnikov. Wyatt Johnson would put the Stars on top 2-1, 8 minutes and 15 seconds into that middle frame, his 19th of the year from Jamie Benn and Heiskanen. So 2-1 would be where we would stand at the end of the second period and at the end of regulation. So a very close contest, to say the least. The Stars would prevail 2-1. So with the victory, the Stars are sitting first in that Central Division with a record of 35-16-8. And despite the loss, the Hurricanes are still sitting second in that Metropolitan Division with a record of 34-18-5. All right. I think I have I got 4 more games to review. Next one took place in Edmonton, where we had the Battle of Alberta. The Calgary Flames went in to Edmonton to take on the Oilers. In the first, Kadri would kick things off for the Flames just 2 minutes and 2 seconds into that period, his 21st of the year from Dewar and Hanifin. Pospisil would increase the lead to 2-0, getting his 6th goal of the year from Zary and Pachel, and that goal happened 9 minutes, 11 seconds into the frame. With 4 minutes and 7 seconds remaining, Hanifin would increase the lead to 3-0, getting his 10th of the year from Backlund and Jonathan Huberdeau. Zach Hyman would finally stop the bleeding, getting the Oilers the first goal of the game on a power play from McDavid and Bouchard. For Hyman, that would be his 36th goal of the season. The guy's on pace for at least 40 minimum. It's unreal. After 20 minutes of play, it was 3-1 in favor of the Flames. Zach Hyman would get his second goal of the game, his 37th of the year from Draisaitl and McDavid, 4 minutes and 34 seconds into that frame, cutting the deficit to 3-2 at that point. Hunt would put the Flames up 4-2, getting his first goal of the year from Huberdeau and Shillington, and that goal happened with 9 minutes and 13 seconds in the frame. With just under 6 minutes to go, 5 minutes and 51 seconds to be exact, Hanifin would get his second goal of the game, his 11th of the season from Zary and Rasmus Anderson. A power play goal to note. After 40 minutes of play, the Flames had a 5-2 lead. Blake Coleman would increase the lead to 6-2 with just over 7 minutes to go, 7 minutes and 9 seconds to be exact, his 23rd of the year, assisted by Majapani. Janmark would finally score late in that third period for the Oilers, cutting the deficit in half to 6-3, getting his 4th of the year, assisted by Ekholm. But for the Oilers, it was too little too late at that point. So 6-3 would be the final score in favor of the Flames. So Calgary, after the win, are 28-25-5. There's still a few points out of a postseason or out of a playoff berth, but you gotta dig deep and like kind of grind it out. It's a shame that they traded away Lindholm and Zadorov, and there's possible more trades coming from the Flames. But if you're this close to a playoff spot, when you want to be a buyer rather than a seller, even if you make it in as a wild card team, who cares? You're still in the playoffs. Speaking of the playoffs, now the Oilers, I believe, have lost 3 in a row, and this is not looking good. 33, 20, and 2. They still are third in that Pacific Division, but their lead over the Kings is very narrow, and the Kings are the last team I will be reviewing from this particular night. All right, next matchup took place in Seattle. We had the Kraken, and they were playing host against the Minnesota Wild. All right, let's see just how this matchup unfolded. So in the first period, Vince Dunn would kick things off for the Seattle Kraken just 36 seconds into the frame, getting his 10th of the season for McMahon and Benier. Johansson would tie the game up 5 minutes into that frame, getting his 9th of the year from Zuccarello and Middleton. Kaprizov would add a power play goal with 6 minutes and 28 seconds to go, his 25th of the season from Zuccarello and Ryan Hartman. After 20 minutes of play, it was 2-1 in favor of the Wild. In the second, a minute and 9 seconds into that frame, Matt Boldy would increase the lead to 3-1, getting his 23rd of the year from Kaprizov and Zuccarello. A minute and 15 seconds after that, Kaprizov will get his second goal of the game, increasing the lead to 4-1, his 26th of the year from Eriksson Ek and Faber. Roughly 7 minutes into that frame, Mermis would increase the lead to 5-1, getting his third goal of the year from Zuccarello and Dewar. After 40 minutes of play, it was 5-1 in favor of the Wild. In the third period, just a lone goal to report, Jordan Eberle would knot his 13th goal of the year, assisted by Adam Larson. 5-2 would be the final score in this one. So with that, the Wild are 28, 24, and 6. And I didn't realize this until I checked the standings. They're only 2 points back of a final wildcard spots. They are beyond sellers. They can guarantee be buyers once this trade deadline comes around. And for the Kraken, the 24, 22, and 11, and they're still on the outskirts looking in when it comes to the postseason. All right, 2 more games to review, and they both took place in California. The first one had the Nashville Predators, and they were heading in to San Jose to take on the Sharks. All right, let's take a gander and see just how this matchup went. So in the first, Sherwood would kick things off for the Predators. 9 minutes and 46 seconds to go on the clock. His 6th of the season from McCarron and Ryan Jost. After 20 minutes of play, it was 1-0 in favor of Smashville. Philip Forsberg would get a late power play goal in the second period. Just 1 minute 33 seconds to go. His 27th of the year, assisted by Novak and Gustav Nyquist. After 40 minutes of play, the Predators a comfortable 2-0 lead. In the third, Granlund would finally get the Sharks on the board 1 minute and 10 seconds. In the period, his 7th of the season, assisted by Amberson. Sherwood would notch his second goal of the game, his 7th of the season, assisted by Carrier, 3 minutes and 40 seconds into that frame. Zadina would cut the deficit to 3-2, getting his 8th of the year, assisted by Jan Rutta. That goal would happen 9 minutes and 34 seconds in the frame. With just 12 seconds remaining, Nyquist would score with Forsberg assisting. For Nyquist, that would be his 14th of the year, making it 4-2 at that point in favor of Nashville. So with the win, the Predators are currently sitting 31, 25, and 2. They now have the number 2 wildcard spot in the Western Conference. As for the Sharks, 15, 36, and 5. Just like the Blackhawks, it's going to be a very long season, to say the least, for San Jose. All right, and the last matchup from Saturday took place in Los Angeles, where we had the host team and the LA Kings, and they were playing against the Anaheim Ducks. All right, let's take a gander and see how this matchup unfolded. So Jacob Silverberg would kick things off with a power play goal, the 6th of the year from Ryan Strome and Cam Fowler, 1-0 in favor of Anaheim at that point. Kevin Fiala would tie the game up with 4 minutes and 37 seconds to go, a power play goal of his own, his 16th of the year, assisted by Kempe and Drew Doughty. After 20 minutes of play, we were all tied up at 1. In the second period, despite the fact that the Ducks were down a man, Carrick would give them a 2-1 lead, assisted by Henrique, 9 minutes and 8 seconds into that frame, a shorthanded goal to note. On a separate power play, Drew Doughty would tie the game up, getting his 13th goal of the year, assisted by Kempe and Kevin Fiala, and that goal happened with 5 minutes and 36 seconds to go. There was no scoring in the third period, no scoring in overtime. It would take a shootout to decide a winner in this matchup, and Trevor Moore would play the hero, giving the Kings a 3-2 lead. 3-2 victory, I should say. So with that, the Kings are 29-17-10. They do currently have the number 1 wildcard spot, but they're actually tied points-wise with the Oilers. So it's going to be very close. I guarantee not both those teams are making it into a top 3 role in that Pacific Division. So either the Kings or the Oilers, I could easily see being in a wildcard spot once the season is over. And after the loss, the Ducks are 20-34-3. Therefore, sellers once the trade deadline comes around. All right, I believe I'm finally all caught up on my recap from the NHL. As always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, please feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative. Until next time, take care.